You can't really necessarily outwork your way to the next level. It's work plus strategy plus people all mixed into this cocktail where there's no recipe.
Everything's going to be fine, and then I'll deal with myself later. Well, what if we don't get later?
Hey, you're not alone. This is scary. It's super hard. That's actually how everyone feels. It's just that most people don't talk about it.
Welcome back to I Can Fit That In, the show where ambition meets alignment. Today, I'm joined by Riggs Kubiak, entrepreneur, investor, coach, and author of the new book, Earned. Riggs grew up in a small town in Idaho and built a career in real estate before spotting an opportunity to modernize one of the world's largest industries through technology. He went on to found Honest Buildings, a construction technology company that raised more than $50 million, grew to over 120 employees, and was ultimately acquired by Procore, and later became a multi-billion-dollar company that's publicly traded. Today, Riggs invests in and advises founders, helping entrepreneurs navigate the realities of building something meaningful. Don't we all want that? I'm excited to talk about the lessons behind his success, both the challenges, the growth, and the perspectives that inspired his new book, Earned. Riggs, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Well, you and I have had the pleasure of connecting. And also, Craig also, had the pleasure of connecting with you too. And we have a lot in common, as we were just chatting about: commercial real estate, authors. We have boys similar ages. I mean, lots of different things that we have in common. And one of the things I'd love to start in, hearing your story is this small town Idaho boy kind of meets, big corporate in the world of real estate, and just walk us through that journey alone. And then we will get into you actually starting Honest Buildings.
Yeah, well, I guess it's kind of a funny story. So I grew up in Sandpoint, Idaho, which I refer to as God's country now. It is unbelievably beautiful. It is a small resort town in the northern panhandle of Idaho on a lake that's 50 miles long with mountains surrounding it, and a ski mountain called Schweitzer, which is amazing, that sits like right above this little town. So true four-season resort town, amazing for boating and skiing and just like all the things. But it's pretty small. So we ended up moving when I was 10 years old. Fourth grade, we moved to the big city of Spokane, Washington, which that's a joke, of course, because it's a pretty small city as relation to most cities. But it was great for like school and education. I got to go to Gonzaga Prep High School, which I'm still like very close with all my buddies from Gonzaga Prep. And I'm a diehard Gonzaga hoops fan, the Gonzaga University. I just was like, maybe there's an opportunity to see the world a little bit. So I got into Boston College, went to Boston College thinking about it as like an adventure, like let's go see the world a little bit. And my theory was always that I was coming back. I'm like going back to live in the Pacific Northwest, which I love. And that'll be easy. I'll just go to college, get a degree, hopefully, and then just come back and, learn how to have a job, which I didn't really know what I was going to do. But fast forward, went to Boston, got into finance, got into real estate, actually like leasing apartments while I was at Boston College because I needed to make money. So I scheduled all my classes in the morning doing finance, got this job leasing apartments in the afternoons, which ended up being great. Like real life, but learned a lot about, more like being an adult, but also making money. And then the confluence actually of the internet and real estate happened then because I'd post all the listings on Craigslist. No one was using Craigslist at the time. This is 1999. And I ended up being like one agent in this little, real estate agency, this, leasing agency, because all my listings were on Craigslist and everyone was coming from out of town,
How
as you know.
Funny. Craigslist.
Like,
oh my God.
Chicago, right? But people would all look for apartments before
That's how
they
Craig
moved.
found his first apartment in New York City.
It makes sense. But back then, that was like a crazy thing.
Yeah.
We had these old computers there. So I ended up doing that. And then I ended up getting an internship in commercial real estate my junior year. And then my senior year, these folks at Ernst & Young from New York City came and recruited the finance group. So, finance kids from Boston College. So I was like, ooh, I'll just check this out. It was September of my senior year. I ended up getting a job. They flew us down to New York City. I've really never been to New York City. And they're like, do you want this job in this, big building in Midtown Manhattan? I'm just like, yes, done. So I signed up for that, ended up moving to New York City, knew nothing. I jokingly called it studying abroad. I was like, I'll be here for a year or 2 years, like living in this crazy, huge city. That was in 2003. And now I live with my wife and 2 kids in New Jersey, right outside of New York City, and it's 2026. So, I definitely didn't make it home right after, but I did get deeply into commercial real estate, and that whole journey evolved from just sort of a job right out of school to working in this sort of small investment bank to working at one of the biggest owners in the world who, Tishman Speyer in New York City. They have a big office in Chicago and lots of other places.
Yeah.
Did lots of things there, and then ended up starting this company out of that, because I just there was no internet, there was no technology really anywhere. It was just sort of spreadsheets and paper piled up, especially as it related to construction. So that's how I ended up with this crazy idea, maybe that technology could impact the real estate industry. And so I started a company to do that, had no idea what I was doing, almost failed so many times, but ended up scaling that. We raised about $50 million from a variety of different venture capitalists and big real estate owners, grew that team from, just a couple of us to 120 people. And then that got acquired by Procore, as you mentioned in your introduction. And that combined company went public on the New York Stock Exchange, which was this amazing thing. And stayed there for 5 years, trying to help that integration. And then post that integration, this is a long-winded intro for you.
No, good.
Post that acquisition and getting the team situated and making sure that our, product was really well, was sort of ready for scale inside of Procore. I ended up helping founders. Like, I just love helping entrepreneurs, spending time with them and seeing if they could learn from the mistakes that I would make or had made, and some of the ones that, decisions that went well. And I would sort of joke at the end of each one of those stories, I'd say, like, this is going to be a chapter in my book. And then I was like, about a year ago, I was like, I'm just going to write this book. Like, what am I doing? I kind of like am telling people these stories. And so this book Earned originated out of all of these sort of mistakes that I had made that I would tell founders about and hope that it would help them on their journey, like accelerate their impact. And, that was one of the most important conversations I think that I had along the journey, was with other founders who would say, hey, this is what I did. Watch out for this, watch out for that, or this worked really well. And I just valued that so much. And that's how I got here.
Right. I mean, so thanks for sharing that. It's clear that you obviously built a very successful company that you then exited. But what I find unique, and what I have been able to browse through so far in your book, and I will be reading the full book on my vacation. What I find unique is that you really focus on more of the emotional realities of entrepreneurship, and not just these like kind of typical, sorry to say this, but success stories that we've all kind of heard until we're blue in the face. No pun intended, your book is blue. But I want to get into a little bit of that emotional aspect of choosing to start something, to leave, like I have, and what Craig has done, like to leave the security of the big corporate job and choose to start something to, make an impact, to solve a problem, to, offer something new and different, to do things better. That's not an easy choice. And so walk us through that choice, but then also what it took to scale your company emotionally. And I want to really focus with you on, like, what did it actually require of you as a person?
Well, the first thing I did was I found this person who wrote this, and I purchased it, I read it, and I memorized it. And now I'm able to successfully talk about what happened. I did read your book, and it is amazing.
Awesome.
And I think there's a lot of commonality, actually. Not that we're saying the same thing, but we're like hitting on a lot of the same themes.
Yeah.
And I deeply appreciate that. So yeah, I think that you're right about the bro culture or the hustle culture or whatever term. I mean, there's probably a million different terms for it, but what I found in talking to other entrepreneurs is that it's very hard, unless you're in a one-on-one, off the record situation. It's hard to not just talk about success. It's just like, oh, we just raised this round. This is our last valuation. Look at these investors that we have. We just hired these great people, got this new customer, this logo, like our growth, like all this stuff. And I think you, in a way, at least I felt like a little bit wired to do that because you're constantly sort of pitching, right? For me, when I was growing the business, you were pitching customers. Obviously, you're looking for new customers. You kind of have to pitch your teammates a little bit. You're trying to hire a lot of people. We were trying to hire a lot of people. You're always looking for new investors. So you're sort of pitching new investors. You're pitching the market, and in a way, you're sort of pitching yourself. Like, we've got to keep this thing moving. So I think that need to always be doing something, and sort of like you talk about in your book, and I definitely felt as like just constantly doing more creates this like need to, celebrate those accomplishments. But even while I was doing that, in the back of my head, there weren't a lot of people to talk to about, the doubt. Like, what if this doesn't work? We have a lot of people here. If this is really nerve wracking. We've raised a lot of money. A lot of people know. We've been in a lot of headlines. Like, what if this doesn't work? How is that going to feel? So I just think that is something that needs to be talked about more in the open. And it's awesome that I was able to talk about it a little bit with other founders. But I think that in getting that out there through books like yours and the one that I put out there, like, I think it just creates a little more normalcy around it of like, hey, you're not alone. This is scary. It's super hard.
Yeah.
And it's okay to talk about that because that's actually how everyone feels. It's just that most people don't talk about it.
That is so true. Most people just aren't transparent in general, and it's easy to just only look at external markers of, success or failure. And it's not easy to look at the human aspects of what it actually takes to wake up every day and say, I'm going to keep going, and I've been an entrepreneur, but of a very different style. So I'm not building a business to sell it. So they're two very different things. And I think you're probably more now you're in that world, right? Where you're like, hey, my work now is about impact. It's about helping others. And I think that's a unique place to get to because first of all, not everyone gets to that point or wants to, which is fine. But building a business and helping other people to impact their lives and impact their companies is completely different than trying to scale something as fast as you can to then exit, right? To sell. What do you think we are not discussing in the world of kind of founders and building something really meaningful? What are we not discussing? So we talked about, we're not discussing the internal stuff, right? What else are we missing in, the founder world? Like, are people just not are they not surrounding themselves with the right contacts? Like, are they too focused on just profit and being profitable? Because many aren't, but are they too focused on that? Or like, what else are we missing?
Yeah. I don't want to say everyone, like it's probably too broad to have a generalization because I'm sure there's lots and lots of people who are amazing at this. And maybe it's just that I wasn't good at it, but I didn't find a lot of that vulnerability of just being able to say like, hey, this is what I'm going through. This is like, I'm about to quit my job. Like you did this and I'm interested to hear how that felt. But you were working for a big company. I was working for a big company. One day I was like, I'm going to quit that and start this thing that I kind of think could possibly work. But to be honest, like I had no idea. And I think a lot of people go through that.
Yes.
So like, this is a whole new chapter and it's a little bit hard to wade in. I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs about, what it feels like to make that jump. And a lot of people are like, well, I'm just going to get it going just enough before I quit my, real job. But that's tricky. Like very few people, I think, very few people were able to do both long enough to have the certainty to make that change. So like, that's really, that's really, then maybe you're going to hire people and you're going to bring on people where like, that's like pretty terrifying. Like, what if it doesn't work? I mean, I started Honest Buildings with my sister and my sister's, husband, Andy, his cousin. So basically family business. Terrifying to me because, and we openly talked about it. We're like, hey, if this doesn't work, we don't want this to upset our relationship, and I talk about that in the book on team building, connecting with or building something with family, but also in your original, employees, it's pretty hard and scary. And a lot of businesses break because the founders, co-founders, early people like just don't work, and like
Yeah.
they start for maybe the wrong reason, or they get connected and they break up, and like a lot of companies can't handle those breakups. So
Yes.
I think that's very nerve-wracking, and I think that there's a lot of stats out there, but there's not a lot of like conversation about how to maybe talk about that before you make this leap.
That's so true. I've seen that with many, many companies where, there's two co-founders, and then, one is going to be the CEO and one's going to be maybe the COO, or just, kind of remain as just a co-founder and help with, growth strategy and things like that. But somewhere those heads start to butt, and there's only room for one person at the top.
Yeah.
So I've seen that story too many times. What would you say? Well, I guess a couple of things that came up for me as I was just listening to you. You're right. Like many people go through this scenario, like mentally and emotionally of, gosh, I'd love to start something like this or like that. And, and obviously today it's information overload everywhere we look. So there's all kinds of, ideas that people are getting from what they're seeing out there in the world of social media. But like wanting to do something and having a thought about it and actually doing it are just two completely different things. I created this experience called the alignment immersion specifically for female executives at a senior level, knowing full well that it's either like the next stage of their leadership or just the next stage of their life, or it's the next stage of like, what are they going to build? And like, what do they want to actually bring into fruition? That's the stuff that matters, right? Because a lot of people, and not just women, but I'm just doing this for women first, but a lot of people are feeling like there's something more, like there's just something missing, and they're not fully living their life yet, right? And it's like, we're all very ambitious people. Our generation, like we're extremely ambitious. We want to do good things in the world. We want to make money. We want to surround ourselves with great people. And yet, if something doesn't feel fulfilling in our lives, like we need to make changes. So for you, it wasn't that something didn't feel fulfilling, but it was definitely, gosh, I've got this itch. I think I need to scratch it, and I'm going to go do it. Walk us through something that you believed about entrepreneurship at the time, like before you actually said, I'm going to quit my job and start building this thing. Walk us through something you believed that ended up being completely wrong about entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Well, that's an amazing question. I think we could talk for 6 days about that, because the biggest thing was I thought it was going to be easy. I mean, you read the headlines and it's like Instagram has 10 people and they sell for $1 billion. I'm like, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. Like, what's the problem? It's like, why is this so hard? It reminds me of golf. It's an easy game. The ball just sits on the tee. You just hit it down there and then you put it in the hole. Like, why? It's not even moving. Like, why is that a hard sport? And I think that's just like such a good parallel, because
till you hit one good shot out of 9 holes and you're like, okay, I'll try this again.
From the outside looks easy. It's like you start a company, rich people give you a bunch of money, you scale it up, you sell it to someone, and like, that's great. And it's just every chapter in a literal sense is just so challenging. So I don't know. I definitely thought it was going to be easier. So that's I think that's probably the biggest thing. But
yeah.
I think another thing that you talk about in your book, though, and I also talk about, which is you can't outwork it either. I was definitely sort of trained to think, just work really hard, just keep working really hard, and if something's challenging, just work harder, and you can outrun it. And I think that is a very interesting realization, that maybe that's not true. But can you actually achieve something great without working really hard? I'm not sure that's true either. So it's like a very interesting dynamic where I felt almost burned out at some points along the way, because I felt like I was working so hard. And as a leader, I felt like I had to continue to demonstrate that I was working very hard all the time, because I wanted to succeed. And I felt like the worst thing would be if we failed and we didn't feel like we were working as hard as we possibly could. That would make it worse. So at a minimum, if we're going to fail, like, let's work as hard as we possibly can. Yeah. And if we succeed, maybe that part of that success is because we worked really hard, which in our case as a company, I do think that a lot of it was just continuing to work. But now in hindsight, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's very hard to decouple the effort that goes into it and the success that we had. I mean, maybe part of it is luck, but I would say that hard work and luck are perfectly correlated. Mm-hmm. So like that's interesting too, right? It's like, but I also felt really burned out for a while, which I talk about in the book. And I think a lot of leaders run into this of just, you can't outwork yourself forever because you end up just fizzling I think you talk about the fire, right? It's like you can put as much wood as you want, but if the smoke, or the ashes put the fire out, then, what's the point? And so I think that that's like a very interesting dynamic and something that I had no idea of before, because in my world, in the corporate world, I felt like there was a little structure around, you work hard, but you're going to kind of get to the next level as long as you continue to do it. Whereas in entrepreneurship, there's no rules. You're just out there, on your own, and you can't really necessarily outwork your way to the next level. It's work plus strategy plus people plus product market fit plus luck and timing, all mixed into this cocktail where there's no recipe. It's sort of like you're just making it up along the way.
Yeah, I equate it to like when you're in a corporate role or working, for someone else's business, like your lane, right? Like you're like in this box and you know exactly what you have to do and you carry that out every day. And for the most part, you can probably do it in your sleep, and and you just work hard knowing that you're working towards the next promotion and salary increase, what have you. But I equate that type of environment, like where you're working in another business versus having your own, to like you're in a lake versus you're in an ocean. It's just so much more vast when you're an entrepreneur. Like there's so many more things that you have to think about and siphon through and consider and then decide to execute on or not. And those actions, like every day, you only have so many hours. So the actions that you take, of which every single day requires many of them, they all make such a difference. Like every single little action matters, and I actually believe that in life, every single action matters. It's not just in business, but when you run your own thing, you really, really see how important all the actions are, which is why, like in my book, it's very important of where's your energy going? That's just a distraction, and getting clear on that and kind of bringing yourself back to center and saying, no, like I got to stay focused. I have to keep taking action this way. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I know a lot of people I've worked with over the years will say, I need clarity before I can take action. And a lot of times, at least I've learned this in running my own thing, is I need to take action so I can gain clarity around something I want clarity on.
Yes.
Do you see that?
I love that. I love that. Yeah, 100%. And it's a funny thing. Like this woman, Lisa Gansky, who was an investor and advisor to me, she started do you remember O-Photo, the original digital camera site? She sold it to Kodak, and Kodak had a chance to like make the move and like put O-Photo in the beginning or sort of in the middle of the company, and didn't do it. And Kodak is sort of no longer, which is such a bummer. But
exactly,
she's amazing. But she used to say, "Can you squint and see it?" Right. So it's like you don't want to jump with your eyes closed, because now you have nothing. You don't want to take action with just blindness. Mm-hmm. But you'll never be able to take action with like full 20/20 vision.
Right.
Or everyone would do it. Right. But it's like, can you squint and like see the future a little bit? And if you can, like there you go. I always thought that was such a cool way to think about that.
That's a really good one. So back to the emotional stuff for a second. What is it? So you're clearly now very comfortable having these vulnerable conversations with other founders and entrepreneurs. And that is based on your lived experience, right? Of having been one and the journey that you've gone through. Why do you think men in particular, and I'm asking you this because you are a man, why do you think men in particular have a hard time being vulnerable? Like what do we need to shift in just the ways we operate to help men be more open and vulnerable?
I do not know the answer, but maybe just skipping to the second part of the question, like have a bunch of examples of people who were vulnerable. Like I ran this retreat at Procore called Founders Forum. And Founders Forum was a group of 16 CEOs, founders that would come from all over the world to basically like connect up for a weekend in Santa Barbara and hang out with each other, to try to learn from each other, and also try to just like make it easier to be a founder. And then ideally also learn from Procore. And I thought it was amazing that Procore would do that, because they're sort of supporting this entrepreneurial ecosystem and like pushing the whole market forward. So just like an amazing symbiotic relationship. But I knew that there wasn't a chance for people to really connect more than like what we started out talking about. Oh, here's my company. Here's how much money I've raised. Here's my product. Here's my customers. Like all that stuff that frankly, like no one really cares about. Like I can read about space. I don't need you to tell me like the investors you have. It's not super interesting. But who you are and like why you are doing it is fascinating. And that's the thing that shockingly gets talked about the least. And the way that I did it then, and I think is a big part of the reason to have this book, is just do it yourself. And then maybe you're inviting people to share because you've shared, right? But if you don't share and you walk up to someone, you're like, hey, tell me your deepest, darkest secrets about how you're terrified of failing because you've told everyone about this and you're about ready to quit your fancy job. People look at you like, why would I ever do that? Right. But if you're like, hey, here's what it felt like when I did it, they're like, ooh, I feel that way too. This is exactly, this is exactly what's going through my mind. I don't know. I feel like more examples of that transparency maybe will encourage and, be a catalyst for folks to be able to talk about it, feel more comfortable, and hopefully through books like mine and books like yours.
Right. Give people permission, right?
Give people permission. And the more data points they have that, hey, this is super helpful. And it's not actually something that makes you worse, but it actually might speed you up. That's a beautiful thing. And I didn't have that, part of the reason why I wanted to write this is put it out there is like just to give it to myself like 10 years ago. And I think there might be lots of people out there that are looking for that. There also might not be. And that's okay too. Like it's okay if it's not for everyone, but if it helps some people in some way, like that's a worthwhile initiative.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it becomes a part of like your soul's mission at some point. You have this life experience for a reason, and then you get to share the lessons with other people. So I love what you're doing in that sense. What would you say about when you were leading Honest Buildings? Was there ever a point where you were so wrapped up in that and your identity was wrapped up in that, where your relationships or your health and well-being or your sense of self were impacted in a negative way?
Yeah, I think so. And amazingly, I didn't know that then. I just felt, I felt a very deep sort of loyalty and need to perform for the people that invested. Like, I think that's an interesting thing about businesses too, that for me, like a big trigger was taking a lot of money from other people. Like I felt like I had to deliver that back, ideally with a return, but I just didn't want to lose it. So every day I sort of was thinking about that pressure, which I think is a good thing in some ways, to like have a driver like that, whether it's internal or external. And also I think that it could become unhealthy too, if it's not sort of moderated a little bit. So, I don't think I was like, there's a big spectrum, right, of like being really hard on yourself and not caring at all. I think I was probably in a relatively healthy place, but at some point, I talked about this in our book, we had two kids. Ashley and I were married, then started the business. Then we had Lane, our first son. Then we had Ryder, our second son. Then I was commuting into New York City because we'd moved to New Jersey. So I'm commuting, both ways. Ashley's commuting both ways. We have a nanny at home. The kids are getting bigger. I'm traveling everywhere. I'm at a conference like every single week. I'm out somewhere. We're raising money. And it was just like, now I feel like I'm being stretched so thin because of this. And then I had this guilt that I wasn't being a good dad or being a good husband or son or brother or uncle or cousin, like it's just like, I can't possibly do everything. And I think that part created an unhealthy mode, because a lot of the stuff that actually I learned in your book, like I wish I would have had, whereas like, I didn't take any time for myself. It was never like block out time and work out. I was just sort of losing it on all fronts. But I didn't know that. Now I see that very clearly, but I just I didn't ever take the time to take a step back or slow down. And I wish I would have, I wish there would have been more clarity around that for myself.
Yeah. And even just, it's funny because we don't get more time, but just creating the space for yourself, which might mean when you're traveling, ducking out of the conference 30 minutes early or showing up, to the breakout session, 10 minutes late. So you could just take a quick walk, or like, it's little things, it doesn't have to be like, we need 4 hours a day for ourselves. Like, no one's going to get that. Right. Like, let's be realistic.
Yeah.
But I know like the biggest shift that I had made was I just wanted at least 30 minutes in those years that you just described when, it's like you're just burning the candle at both ends, working so much, commuting so much. The nanny's there most of the time. I mean, in my neighborhood, we used to laugh, but my nanny was always like, she knew everybody, and I'd see someone at like preschool if I picked up my kid on a Friday at 2, and they're like, oh, we see your nanny more than you. And I'm like, I know, that's by design right now. That is the season of life that I'm in.
Yeah.
But that time is really about space, right? It's just creating space for you with you, because without that, we touched on this earlier, you live in misalignment, and you think, okay, if I just keep performing, if I just keep delivering, if I keep leading this company and these people, everything's going to be fine. And then I'll deal with myself later.
Yeah.
Well, what if we don't get later?
Hey, tell that story that you put in the book of your alter ego voice in your mind that you have a name for that up, whether it's like doubt or guilt.
That inner critic. And every time the doubt, arises, or it's funny because when I'll be stepping on a stage for a keynote, it's like she's always there. She's always trying to tell me, things are going to go poorly for you today. Like, it's not going to land, and that kind of thing. But her name's Erica, and Erica is just the voice in my head. And she's the voice of my ego, and everyone has an ego. We all need one. It does help us socially interact, but it's not who we are, right? It's just this version of us in our minds that likes to think that it's in the driver's seat. And the way I describe that in the book is, Erin is the true me, my essence, my core, my spirit, my soul, whatever word fits for you. Like that version of you that sits in your center, in your heart, like that's the real you. All the other stuff in your mind, that is just your brain, your kind of reptilian, biologically old brain doing what it does. And it's going to always try to protect and defend you, even if that's from your own growth or from the next opportunity that could really get you where you're wanting to go. Right. And I talk about that in the sense of you're always either mentally seeking reward or avoiding pain. So if you think of every single decision you make or action you take or don't take, where are those decisions being made from? And if you just take one quick step back and go, I want to do this. Why do I want to do this? Am I seeking a reward or am I avoiding pain? It's really enlightening when you do that, because you start seeing things so much more clear, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I can catch myself in so many traps,
I love that so much. And that was so clearly present for me, but I didn't name it ever. Right. That's something like the concept of having different parts of you in your mind, and that like study of parts. I never contemplated that until much later, but that is something that just weighed on me, this voice of, you're not good enough. It's not going to work, keep working. You're not working hard enough. Like all of these voices, I think, that push you and drive you, that really led to borderline, burnout for me when I was trying to juggle all those things, and that at least for me, like blocked me from taking those 30 minutes that you talked about. Oh, it's okay. Just take 30 minutes for yourself, just bop out of that conference early. Yeah. All these voices were like, zero chance you're doing that. No way you're doing that. You're not doing nearly enough. In fact, not only are you leaving, like, let's sign up for another conference. Let's get going to another trip. What other meetings can we fit in? How come you've only had 4 meetings today and not 6? What's wrong with you? Like those voices were very, very loud for me in looking back. Now I've had the time to think about it. And I've been fortunate to, read books like yours and be parts of groups that help think about stuff like that. And it's so clear, but it's just so important. So I'm so happy that you've like put it out there, and I'm trying to in a way too.
So, and thanks
to
for asking me to tell the story. So question, do you have a name for that voice now?
not yet, but
Okay.
now when I saw you named yours, I feel like I should.
Yeah. I mean, because that voice never goes away. We just learn to befriend it, honestly. We just kind of go, all right, Erica, I know what you're doing. Like I've been through this many times. I understand exactly. Like you're trying to just protect me from hurt or, from shame if something goes wrong. But I don't need to think about things going wrong. I'm going to think about things going right. And it's, gosh, what a different mindset shift that is, because it's not
Yeah.
how we're skewed. It's just humans are skewed towards the negatives. It's what it is.
Yeah.
Um, so
I think
yeah,
that imposter syndrome, right,
yes,
is so
yes,
prevalent in everyone. And I didn't feel comfortable talking about that at the time. Now I saw it was so clear, but it's amazing being around leaders that are comfortable doing that. So Tui Portamanch, who was the CEO and founder of Procore when I was there, now he's the chairman. He's comfortable talking about that. He's like, I've had imposter syndrome since we started this thing all the way through. And that's just amazing, when you can be open and talk to people like that and realize that it's at all levels. In fact,
yes.
your boys are basketball players, so are mine. LeBron James does a podcast or a video podcast with Steve Nash, two absolute legends. And I just saw a clip where they talk about doubt. They're like, did you ever doubt that this was going to work? Or were you ever negative with yourself? And LeBron James said, I wasn't negative, because that's sort of a word that has a bigger meaning, but doubt always, so like they have that. This is some of the best players in the history of the sport.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very human.
Very human. Yeah. And I mean, I think when you think about something like performance, elite performance, high performance, business, sports, you name it,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that voice is there, but it's not your truth. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, it is a game changer. It will
Yeah.
change the game for a salesperson, for an athlete, for a business owner, for an executive running a company, for sure. What
Let me
would you
ask you a
say?
question.
Yeah.
How do you talk to your kids about hard work versus taking time for themselves, listening to those voices that say they can't do it? It's okay if you fail, but at the same time, we want you to learn how to work really hard.
Yeah.
Like, how do you
This
do
is
that?
where it's actually funny, because my next question to you is about like that, like kind of messy middle for someone who might be like wanting to build something or in the middle of building something. When it comes to like that certainty and confidence that they're on to something and they want to keep going. With
Mm-hmm.
my boys, one definitely has more of a confidence complex, I'd say, and needs to like build self-esteem. The other one's
Mm-hmm.
fairly confident, but also feels like he doesn't have to put in as much work. So that it's
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, and I'm sure you see this in your boys, they're so different.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I try to instill in them is talking to themselves kindly, right? Like, and I just tell them, like, your whole life, you're gonna have a voice in your head that says mean things to you. And it will
Mm-hmm.
try to tell you that, you're not good enough, or you don't deserve something, or you're not worthy. And I describe those actually as just like soul wounds, like everyone's born with them. And so it's up to you throughout your life to figure out how to manage those and just talk back to yourself in a way that you want to be talked to. Like it's that, to me, it's that simple. But like I was never taught any of that as a kid. Like we didn't, in fact, I grew up in Catholicism. So it was the opposite. It was like, bless me, Father, for I have sinned and here are my sins, like,
Right.
and it was just such a different world of just like all the guilt and never feeling like you are good enough or inherently good, and that you have to constantly be sorry for something. So I try to just instill that in them. When it comes to hard work, I mean, we push our kids hard and it
Mm-hmm.
feels a lot like we're nagging them, but we push them because we see their potential, right? Like
Yeah.
we're not pushing them to keep up with the Joneses or to make them something or someone they're not. I want them to always remain who they are. Like creativity is really important in our household. I'm like, draw, color,
Mm-hmm.
like turn on an art show, like, learn the guitar, like you have one, like just do things that are not just about how am I performing in sports and school.
Right.
And I think that that's another factor that actually that adults miss out on. We get so
Creativity.
involved in just it's all work and then
Mm-hmm.
taking care of our family. And we
Mm.
forget that that creative outlet can be something so moving for our souls and so grounding for our thoughts and
Yeah.
emotions, right?
Yeah. I love that.
Good
That's awesome.
question. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a book,
Yeah.
there's a book called The Messy Middle, which is an
Uh-huh.
amazing book,
Yes.
written by Scott Belsky, who was actually an investor in my business and is a friend. He
Oh,
is an
really? Okay. Yeah.
amazing person, and it's so inspiring that it just, when you put that, I just thought
That's
about it. But
awesome. So I do have one last question for you then.
okay.
So you call the book earned. So what is one thing that you have earned throughout your journey that you shared with us, um, that actually had nothing to do with money or
Yeah. Actually,
evaluation of your business?
I think that hopefully you will appreciate this when you get to the end of the book, but it kind of comes full circle at the end, because I think that at the beginning it was sort of like, we're going to call it earned because it's really hard to get through all these stages. It's really hard to start something and see it through and exit and then go beyond it and sort of start over again. And then what I realized was, at the very end, you just kind of have to earn the opportunity to start again. And in a weird way, it's like this circular leadership where you start with nothing and you sort of end with nothing. Like, it's at that very end. Now here I am again, alone, starting something. This book, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, and it's like a full cycle all the way through. But I just think each chapter, you earn a little bit more and you earn a little bit more. And I think that when you meet with someone and they're like, congratulations, you earned it. It's like, that means something now. But like, it means more to me now because you actually have done that. And I think that that's hopefully a call to action for entrepreneurs, where, like, just start, just earn the first thing, just get out there, right? Versus all the people that you mentioned earlier, which is like, hey, I've had that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Erin, I loved your book, but like, I was going to do that. I had that same idea. I was going to quit my job and start a business and do lots of the same things you're doing. The number of times people said that to me when we were scaling Honest Buildings, that I had a deck, I had designs for it. Let me show you. I'm just like, it's really hard to do this. Like, you have to earn it. So I just think that that's the sort of the call to action and the reward all at the same time, is to start, scale, finish, look beyond, and then maybe look at doing something else, and just keep going as long as you can, and try and have an impact. And each step of it, you're earning something that hopefully is good for the world. So I don't know. I just like that word.
Yes. I love your message of you earned it is like so on point. So really great job on the book. And I will get through the whole book very soon and I can't wait.
Okay.
But congratulations on today's launch day, June 2nd. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
it's out in all formats. I'm thrilled to
Amazing.
just have it out in the world, and hopeful. My goal is to help 10,000 entrepreneurs. So
Yes.
if one chapter helps one entrepreneur in some way, I'm very happy about it. And I hope that it works.
Congratulations. And I know it's available everywhere books are sold. Where can they learn more about you?
I have a website, earned.vc. So you can check that out if you want. I'm on there. My contact info is there. So feel free to reach out, or LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn.
Great. Well, we'll include all of this in the show notes. Riggs, thanks so much for being here. It was really so fun chatting with you, as I knew it would be.
Yeah, well, I'm thrilled to do it. I loved your book, truthfully. Very, very well done. And I'm so happy that we got to connect, and now we're going to be friends.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Everyone, you know what to do. Please like, share, subscribe, and get the show out to more and more people who need to hear it and will benefit from it. Until next time, be well.